Yeah, yeah. This is what makes you a great guest because that is a perfect segue into identity versus skill. And when someone is transitioning, especially from corporate, and talking about where do you see them kind of get it wrong. So, what does it look like when someone builds a self-employed version of their old role?
Oh, man. Something like what I did.
I'm right there with you. Don't feel guilty. If you want, I can lead with mine because
Yeah.
I definitely did that, and you just explained what it was going into it. I went into it with the being on the corporate side, there were a lot of small business owners that said, "I wish there was someone out there that could help us the way that they help these bigger businesses because it feels like we're trying to compete and we can't beat them." And I'm sitting there going, "You know what? You're actually talking to the person that's part of the problem." Like, I've been in the rooms where they're like, "Yeah, I see so and so starting to come up a little bit, and they're cutting into our market share. We gotta figure out a way to either acquire them or crush them." And I'm going, "Oh god, I'm gonna have to figure out a way to be able to do this." So it's going out and going, you know what? Okay, now it's my chance to be able to help the small businesses. And again, I'll equate it to the early stage versus the seasoned businesses. All of these early stage businesses that kept saying, "I wish, I wish, I wish." When I went out, I said, "Okay, well now I'm out here. Let's get to work." And one of the things that stands out to me now, and that I've had to kind of pivot with my business, is based on one word, and it's called readiness. And there were a lot of early stage people that said, I wish that someone was out here to be able to help me. And then when I stepped out to be able to help them, their thing is, oh, well, you know what? Let me get back to you and let me this and let me that. And I'm like, I mean, I had a very nice check. Now I'm out here on my own. I actually got to keep the lights on and be able to do certain things. So I went into it with the passion of I want to be able to help small businesses. I looked at the failure rate, 20% first year, 30% second year. By the time you get to year five, 50% fail. That's a disturbing number that I don't think people pay attention to, let alone the fact that the number goes up, it doesn't go down. So when they're like, "Let me get back to you," you're just increasing your chances of something failing because you're flying blind and there's blind spots you're not even paying attention to. So for me, I had to pull myself out of that and say, "Okay, I want to be able to work with the early stage businesses. I want to help the people trying to figure it out because I love the aha moment. To me, that's the best check I could actually get. But then there's the check that actually helps me keep the business going. So I had to make that pivot and say, okay, now I actually have to focus on, or is this someone that's ready to be able to not just hear, but to listen? So I made that mistake. I joked with you about Michelle Mitchell, where I had the conversation with her, and she's like, "Oh, I remember year three. Oh, I remember year five." Year 3 and year 5, I was still working my way through that going, "Well, I kinda feel like I figured out a way to be able to help early stage businesses," and her thing is, "That's so cute." You keep
Right.
doing that, like, if you're getting by, you're getting by, but I'm telling you that you need to start looking at how you're gonna be able to do that and sustain, and by the time year 5 came around, I was a little more jaded, and I'm like, "Yeah, I mean, ooh, it's a lot of work being able to help them," and she's like, "You're almost there. You're almost there." I'm not gonna tell you not to do it because I realize you still have to learn this lesson on your own, but I'm just
Mm.
gonna keep reminding you that there's a better way to be able to do this. There's a more efficient way. And then I think I'm coming up on year 8, and we had the conversation we had on the podcast, and she's just like, "Yeah, I mean, it's like getting on a plane. You gotta put your mask on first." And I was like, "Yeah, you were telling my story. I've made the pivot to I need to work with the businesses that are ready, and then I'll create content and things for the people that aren't ready. And that allows me to kind of clear off my ledger and check that box, but I'm still able to see to the business. So, like, where I used the YouTube, podcast as an example, when the guy was like, "Oh, yeah, I mean, we can get you more volume." This is me giving back. I'm not doing this to be able to make a lot of money. I'm doing this because there are DIY people, there are early stage businesses that don't have their answers, and this is me helping them be able to get some of those answers. But I've got my business for the people that are ready to actually do something with it. So if you're still like, "Oh, well, I can go to AI, I can take this information and figure out how to be able to do it myself," I'm gonna give you a starting point. I'm gonna give you the prompts that allow you to go in and ask all the questions you wanna ask over there. Good luck. But when you realize it's gonna give you best practices that may not align with your business model and not a real strategy that you can customize to your own business, then come back, and then we can have a better conversation. So that is my epiphany. Do not feel bad. That is me telling on myself to the rest of the world for them to see, like, this has been the evolution.
Yeah. I mean, and I think that that's good, and that's very inspiring because it it does boil down to identity. It does boil it down to, like, where do you see yourself in this large ocean of, what are we trying to do with our lives, right? In society. And especially when you're shifting from corporate, right? Like the analogy that I can think of that comes to mind, it's like, when you're in a 9 to 5, you're used to being in a boat, right? You're in a boat and you have your job, like you're pushing an oar, you're rowing it, right? Or whatever the case might be. And then you decide to take your leap, and some people, they might wanna just leave their job and move to another boat,
Mhm.
right? It's like, you're doing the resume game and you just go from boat to boat, and, that's what a lot of people do in their corporate jobs. But when you decide like, "Hey, I wanna jump out here in the Wild Wild West," it's really you're jumping from the boat to the water.
Yeah.
And now there's a whole bunch of people in the water, right? Some of them are floating on rafts or headboards like in the Titanic, right? Some are just like, and you're trying to, like, figure out, like, what do I wanna do? Am I building my boat while I'm swimming in the water?
Yeah.
Am I gonna partner with someone who's halfway done with their boat and I wanna help them out? Is there a community of folks that are building boats? Or maybe I should go on shore and maybe I'm making paddles for a living to help people. Like, how smart
Right.
are you
Yeah.
about it? Like, how much are you gonna think outside the box? I think most people leave corporate and they go right into either coaching or some form of like
Mhm.
consulting because it's like they want to translate the title over, right? And that was one of the first lessons I had to learn because my title was technical project manager, right? And I'm like, I don't have to stick to project management. Like this is my business is what I do, but really what I was doing there was strategy,
Mhm.
and solving problems. I wrote white papers, like I was, not just, managing the budget, the cost and the scope, but I was doing a whole lot more than that. I was creating solutions, right? And so I'm like, no, I want to go in and actually strategize with people. I saw a lot of problems and a lot of issues that needed to be solved and a lot of things that were, hiding behind the water cooler, right? Like I like to say, right? Which is easy to do when you're in a
Word.
when you're in a large, like, corporate construct, a lot of things get, kinda get, kicked under the rug type of thing, but I'm like, I wanna go in and help solve those problems, right, for maybe not, industries as big, right? Maybe more
Mm.
like the small to mid-sized businesses, but I know that I can do that, and I've been doing it for years.
Yeah.
But it's finding your identity in that big ocean, right? Finding,
Mm.
like, what you can bring to the table and having grace for yourself because it takes time, right? And not to say that during that time there might be some struggles, there will be some struggles, right? But just accept it as a part of the process,
Yeah.
the process. And I think people who embrace that and they know like I have to get past this point. I have to develop, I have to find what that identity looks like. I might have to try some things here and there and really kind of find my sweet spot in all of this. But if you keep going, right, your grit and determination and be fueled by whatever you need to be fueled by, you'll get there.
I love that. I love that. Yeah, I it depends on what your day job was when you're venturing out into entrepreneurship because I know some people that we have a similar background on strategy and like I've been the technical account manager, I've been the project manager, the solutions architect. I've had a lot of roles where I got to work on that part and I realized I loved that part. And I was like, so that needs to transfer over, but then it's okay, well, you have to think about what audiences are going to allow you to transfer that over. And if you don't plan for that part, then you will go through the part that I went through of getting to the point where you had to be able to figure out, okay, as much as I want to be able to do all of this and tell that great story, I actually need to make sure that I'm working with the people that are willing to, that are going to help me stay in business long enough to tell that story.
Mhm,
And I think that's one of the biggest differences. There are some people that come from the corporate side and I've come to appreciate the corporate side. We joked earlier where I said, you know, it burns me to no end that I have to admit they were right when they were like, Sean, they don't have money, so you don't have the time. Like, I know you want to be able to help them. If you want to help them on your spare time. But like during the day, in order for you to get your check, this is how we're going to make sure that you get your check. There's such a thing as being an employee where you don't have the same risks, you don't have the same accountability, you don't have the same consequences. So as an employee, you can have a lot of great ideas
mhm.
and pitch them. And I pitched a lot of great ideas. Some made a lot of money, and there were some where they were like, "No, we can't do that." And I was like, "Well, you know, when I start my own business." "It's all right. We'll just put that one to the side and I'll be able to use that then." And then you start to realize when someone makes a mistake as an employee, they still expect their check. When
Mhm.
you make a mistake as an entrepreneur, it directly affects your check. And it affects not just your check, but your reputation, your credibility, and anything that you could potentially be doing with your business. So, one of the things that I look at when it comes to kind of separating skill and identity is you may be skilled at something, but your identity is what's going to be the thing that helps you stay in business. So, the audience perception of you is going to matter more than how good you are at what you actually do. I know what I brought over from the corporate side, but then I still had to prove it to all the people that were new audiences that I never had a chance to be able to have those conversations with.
Well, yeah, and they don't know you, right? Like, it's they didn't get to sit down in an interview with you. They didn't get to go over your resume. They didn't get to do those different things, right? And
Yeah.
it goes back to something we were saying earlier. It's, people are looking at what are other people saying? It's like, even the referrals, right? I mean, think about the last time you purchased something without looking at the reviews,
Mm. Yeah.
right?
Yeah.
Like, I want to know how much you've helped other people. Like, who else have you helped? I don't want to be your guinea pig.
Yeah. Yeah. I literally put some content around that to say most of the people that I know that will venture into that, they're doing it because they realize they're evaluating what the consequences are for that person. So like a chain store, they can afford to lose you as a customer. So if you're unhappy, all right, you wrote a review. We could throw enough money at it so that that review isn't gonna, like, change the big picture, but when it comes to smaller businesses, if they want their voice to be heard more and more resounding, if they say, "I didn't like this," then they'll probably work with a smaller business because they realize they have more sway, and normally that's the people that I joke and call ne'er-do-wells because, like, you're looking to get leverage on something where, like, there should be no reason to get leverage. Like, if we're all going in with good intentions, then you don't need leverage, you need solutions. But if you're going in trying to figure out how you can expand scope creep and get away with more, then you're gonna go pick someone that may not be as ready to not know what the red flags are and run with some of these things. And I think that's one of the other things that come with being on the corporate side. Like the managers, the owners, all the rest of these people, their job is to recognize the red flags. And then they assign people tasks and allow them to be able to focus on the things that they need to be able to focus on. When you're the business owner, and we're talking about wearing 10 hats,
Mhm.
that's part of that process. You not only have to do the work, but you also have to be the one looking at red flags. You have to be the one to put boundaries in place and a lot of the other things that come along with it.